Thank you so much, Mark. I don't know about you, but I love the emphasis, particularly this morning, on the human aspect, the community, the relational side of things. And I think in many ways what I'm going to share is along those same kind of lines. So I thought maybe I don't even need to do my talk, but I guess I can do it anyway. I have the clicker here. Right, let's go. Okay, my talk is 10 very easy ways to make sure that no one uses your AI tool. Maybe you don't want to know that, but July 2002, I flew to Kenya on a short-term mission trip. I was super excited to be going to Kenya to paint a school, doing something to make a difference in the world. I absolutely loved the experience until towards the end of our time, one of our team members said, "This is great, but why are we here? There are plenty of local people here who can do painting. Aren't we just taking work away from them?" I hadn't thought of that. Looking back, I'm embarrassed to say that thought had never crossed my mind until that point. I'd like to blame it on my British culture, which I think had subconsciously taught me to think that people out there in Africa needed my help, and anything that I could do to help them would be a positive thing. But was I actually making a difference? And worse than that, was I actually making a negative difference in what I was doing and my attitudes? Was I actually causing harm? 2 years later, in 2004, we met this lady called Mama Baimus, who is a lady originally from the Netherlands, who lived for many decades in the southwest of Tanzania with the Fipa language community, helping them to translate the Bible into their language. We only spent a couple of hours with her, but I think it was very obvious to see the love and the dedication that she had for her time with that community. And I'm sure she had tremendous impact through the relationships that she had built with that community over many decades. And yet, as we researched the Bible translation that she had coordinated, it was clear that it was actually hardly being used and was having very little impact. The reason was that the two translators she had worked with, one was from the northern dialect, one was from the southern dialect. They'd mixed their dialects in the translation, and the end result was something that sounded like nobody actually speaks. Since then, I've become very aware of how very easy it is to have a great idea, dedication, good intentions, and yet still not see significant fruit from the work that we're doing. And now, 20 years later, I'm still working with SIL, now on an AI team, and I want to keep asking that question: are we really making a difference? Are we creating tools that people will use? Or 3 years from now, is our code going to be sitting in a GitHub repo that nobody looks at? So I think it's very, very easy to create tools that no one will use. And because I'm lazy and I like easy things, I've titled my talk 10 very easy ways to make sure that no one uses your AI tools. And it's actually even easier than that. I think you don't even have to do all 10 of these things. I think even doing one of these 10 things is probably sufficient to make sure that nobody uses your tool. So I want to share some examples of what we as an AI team within SIL have learned, primarily from two tools that we are developing. One is called AQuA, which is Augmented Quality Assessment for Bible translation drafting. And the second is a new tool we're developing called AQuA, which aims to make machine translation and text-to-speech capabilities available in hundreds of languages. So 10 ways to create tools that no one will use. Number 1, go right ahead and build your idea without talking to users. Bubble wrap. Does anybody know what bubble wrap was first created for? Anybody? Knickknacks? I don't think so. My information comes from Wikipedia, so I don't know how good it is. But according to Wikipedia, bubble wrap was first created as wallpaper. And then the company developing it pivoted and said it's not really taking off as wallpaper. Let's rebrand it as greenhouse insulation. And then, according to Wikipedia, one day somebody from IBM was transporting a computer. They thought, let's wrap it in this bubble wrap thing to kind of keep it safe. And yeah, as I'm sure we all know, that's the one that took off. It wasn't what the designers had originally intended, but that was what the users experimented with and realized this is actually the great use for this tool. So likewise, some of the best use cases for AQuA, Augmented Quality Assessment for Bible translation, some of the best uses are things that we as designers actually had never thought of. So for example, comparing your draft translation to its back translation into a language of wider communication that a consultant is using to check, to make sure that the consultant can have confidence that the back translation is close to the draft. If that made no sense to you, don't worry. The idea is that, sometimes users might come up with ideas for your tool, ways to use it that you as a developer might not have thought of. Another use for AQuA, people have used it to figure out that this part of my text is actually being translated in a different style to this other part. You can see here, the book of John is blue, the book of Luke is green. They've got different translation styles, and that may correspond to you had a different translator or a different translation methodology. And that's often clear when you look at the heat map, when if you're just looking at the text, you might not see that pattern. So that's another use case that we hadn't really thought of, but as users have used the tool, it's become clear that that's something that's very valuable to them. Sometimes as we have talked to users, we've realized that some of the most impactful solutions are not necessarily the most technologically advanced, but they're things that solve pain points of users in their workflows. So when our colleague Joshua visited the Philippines last year to discuss how AI solutions might help with oral Bible translation, one of the most requested features was actually removing the background noise of chickens, for example, from the recording. That doesn't require a great deal of state-of-the-art technology, but it's something that makes a huge difference to the workflow of this particular team and probably others. Notice how the chicken here has 5 toes on his foot. I thought that was quite funny. Number 2, go right ahead and build your idea without listening to users. That's almost the same as the first one, but I wanted to make this a second point to really emphasize listening to those users, particularly listening to the community of users, because they may have very strong opinions about what we are doing, and it's easy to miss those if we're not actively listening. So for example, we're often relating to language communities. If I create a tool for English, well, the English language community is so huge and vast that it doesn't really make sense to talk about the English-speaking community. There's no cohesive community, and if there was a community of English speakers, it would be so diverse that you can't discern any particular opinions from within this community. But I think that's very different when you're relating to minority language communities. So as we're developing, for example, translation and text-to-speech capability for communities that have maybe just a few 100,000 speakers or tens of thousands of speakers, they may have a very strong sense of this is who we are as speakers of this language, and we are the ones who own this language. If your language is spoken just in 10 or 20 villages, a lot of the people may know each other, they know each other's cousins and grandparents, they have a shared sense of history and culture. And so what do they, particularly the community leaders and the church leaders, what do they think about the possibility of machine translation into their language? Or text-to-speech capability in their language. How do they feel about having the voice of a person that they know suddenly saying whatever words you put into their mouth? Or maybe you could do anonymization, so it's not a person that they know, but then how do they feel about having an anonymized voice that doesn't correspond to any particular person when maybe the relational aspect of knowing who you're talking to is very important within that culture speaking that language? My point is, I don't know what communities think, and there's no one thing that minority language communities think. We need to take the time to go and listen to each particular community and take on board their opinions as we're developing tools. And I think my experience has been that people are often too polite to tell us that we're doing things wrong. Unless we really take the time to listen, we're not going to hear these opinions. People will just tell us indirectly by not using our tools and telling others not to use the tools. And so the AI ethics policy that we've just developed within SIL, just published a couple of days ago on our website, ai.sil.org/ethics. We say the technology must be locally rooted in the needs of the community. To ensure this aim is met, we will strive to engage early in the process with affected communities. The ultimate determination of which technologies are deployed for the community will reside within the affected communities. Number 3, in ways of making sure your tool doesn't get used, create another standalone, isolated tool that doesn't relate to anything else. I've kind of borrowed this point from Damien. I guess I'm not going to give it back, so I haven't really borrowed it, I've just taken it. But Damien made the point, and others have made a very similar point, and I know I've had conversations with others of you in this room thinking along very similar lines, that we need to be creating tools that interact with each other. And I love Damien's diagram here of sort of having APIs that allow interoperability between tools that can talk to each other. And this is something that we're also hearing very regularly from our test users of AQuA and AQuA and other products. They say, I love AQuA, I love the data, the assessments, the heat maps, but I use XYZ software. I want it to be integrated into what I'm already using. I think people are very happy to have additional functionality, but they want it integrated into their current workflows, and they don't want to have to open another app or another web page alongside what they're already using. Number 4, don't consider user experience. Even though we're primarily making things available via API, we want to have demo apps so we can get quick feedback from test users. For AQuA, we created a Streamlit app, and our experience with Streamlit is great for demos, for simple things, but we soon realized most of the feedback we're getting, bad UIs, is this your phone number? Phone number input, and you say higher or lower. Even better is the phone number slider. Have you seen that? I love these bad UI things. I'm going to go on to the next one so that doesn't annoy you too much. And Streamlit was great for what we're doing. Most of the feedback we were getting from users was about the limitations of the user interface. And we would tell people, okay, just click here, do this, don't do this. But that's not a great user experience. And the most common complaint was, it logs me out when I refresh, which is not great. In the end, we decided to invest time and effort into making it a higher quality demo user interface. It's not amazing, but it's a lot better than it was. And as a result, we've seen a huge improvement in the user response, not because we've improved the underlying AI capability, but because users can now experience that functionality without tearing their hair out. Number 5, don't consider expert opinions. Most AI tools, I think, that we're developing, all of us, they're designed to mimic human experts. That's generally how we train models, to mimic what a human would do, a human expert. So in the case of AQuA, we're more or less trying to augment the job of a human Bible translation consultant. So when an experienced Bible translator says to us, this particular feature doesn't reflect how Bible translation should be done, we would do well to listen to and learn from that advice. Our AI tool, whatever it is, may be brand new, but whether we're working in Bible translation or kingdom growth or whatever it is, our tool is probably augmenting a task that has been done already by humans for 2,000 years or longer. And there's many people that we can learn from as we're developing those tools. Number 6, make the same mistakes your users have already made. History shows us that having a good tool and a great plan does not guarantee success. And we should know there are many examples from the Bible of people trusting in strength and power and technology and ending up looking very foolish. As we are developing AQuA for translation and text-to-speech, we want to be very intentional in listening to how the users, how the language communities want to be involved in shaping the tools and the workflows around it, particularly their input on the human-in-the-loop parts of the tool so that we can create solutions that make sense in their context rather than imposing outside ideas that make sense to us as developers. I think AI is incredibly exciting, gives us opportunities to do things at a larger scale than ever before. But I don't want to end up repeating the same mistakes as others, just on a larger scale than ever before. Number 7, solve problems that people don't have. I'm naturally very lazy. Apparently this comes from Jurassic Park, I think. Not sure, you guys probably all know that. I'm naturally very lazy. I think it's why I love AI. Why would I copy and paste something 3 times when I can spend 2 hours writing code to automate that? And I suspect many of you are the same. That's why we build tools to make things more efficient, to automate those manual, boring tasks that we don't like to do. But not everyone is like us. While efficiency, I think, is almost universally seen as a positive thing here in the US, I think in many parts of the world, people are wary of too much of a focus on efficiency. People can be worried that we become so focused on the tools and the technologies that we lose the importance of doing things slowly. Sometimes we may gain more by walking than by driving. Sometimes I think it's in the inefficiencies of life that we find meaning and connection with others, and in those inefficiencies that we most deeply encounter God. So I think we need to be asking the question, together with our users, which parts of the workflow do they want to be involving AI in, and which parts do they feel should be done exclusively by a human? Whether we're talking about translation, audio creation, or whatever tool it is in kingdom work, there are probably many steps in the process, and different users and different communities may have very different opinions about where they do and don't want AI to be involved in those processes. Number 8, tell people your AI tool is perfect. This one often surprises me. I think we are probably all used to the fact that AI is not perfect. It's built on probabilities and matrices. It's not built on proofs and certainties. We're used to the fact that a tool like ChatGPT, for example, it can be extremely useful even though it's not perfect. But I think a surprising number of our users expect AI and computers in general to never make a mistake, and they get quite worried when it does. So I often hear, well, if your tool got this thing wrong, how can I trust it to do anything? Or if ChatGPT gave this crazy answer to this question, how can it do anything useful? And I think we in this room are probably very experienced in how these kind of tools, how to use these kind of tools, but many of our users may not be. So I think we need to be very intentional in telling people our tool may be imperfect, and yet we still feel it can be very useful despite those imperfections. Number 9, tell people your AI tool will replace them. In some ways, I think this relates to the previous point. The dominant narrative in our culture is that AI is coming to take over. And I think people understandably feel very threatened by AI tools. And that can lead to a mindset of, how does your tool compare to my ability? How does your tool compare to what a human can do? But I think we need to reassure people that our tools are not here to replace them. And so they shouldn't be comparing the tool with their own abilities and feeling threatened and pointing out where the tool is not as good as a human. I think instead we need to be encouraging people to ask, how is my ability with this tool, how does that compare to my ability without the tool? So let's reassure people that they and their expertise are hugely valuable and will continue to be. And our vision is that the tool will come alongside them and make them even better at what they already do. And number 10, only measure success in terms of numbers and dollars. As I look back on my trip to Kenya, it's not true that the trip had no impact. I looked the other day at the Google Maps satellite view, and it looks like that paint is no longer on the roof 20 years later. But the trip had a significant impact on me through the people that we met and through the opportunity to learn from the hosts. And I think it's a reminder. I like to think that it was equally as impactful for them, but probably it wasn't. But I think, like many things in life, the most significant things are always those things that involve relationships, connecting, and learning from each other. And I think we as AI practitioners, I feel like we have a unique opportunity in history. We have exciting new technologies and the opportunity to combine those with the wisdom and the experience and the human skills that are already within the global mission and the Bible translation movement. And I really think that it's in that intersection of technology together with relationships, godly wisdom, I think that's where we'll see real possibilities for genuine impact in the world. So I just want to close by quoting the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 13, saying, "If I could speak all the languages of the earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would be only a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans, and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor, and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing." And we might want to add, if I could create the most amazing AI tools that were incredibly impressive, they increased efficiency and productivity in reaching our missional goals, but if I didn't have love, well, maybe I could still boast about the tools, but really I would have gained nothing. And Paul at the end of the chapter says 3 things will last forever. Not AI, not our tools that we're developing, however good they are. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. So my prayer for myself, for all of us, is that we would work to serve language communities in love and humility, and that through that, God uses our tools to build his kingdom. Thank you very much. I'd like to hand over to, I think there's a panel on the future of AI, future of missional AI.